Good.
Mm.
Hey, Pamela, thank you for joining me today.
Oh,
Uh,
I'm so happy to
yeah,
get to chat with you.
you're a contributor in the new book I just edited, and could you please tell us the name of the article you wrote and what made you decide to join in this book, which is called The World Walks with You into Therapy, Social Justice, Somatics and Healing? What about the topic of borderline personality disorder drew you to want to be a part of a book about social justice?
So first you asked the title, and my title is Borderline Personality Disorder, Transforming Systemic and Intergenerational Trauma into a Legacy of Hope.
Great.
So I could speak to my connection to this is that I grew up in a family with a lot of patterns of borderline personality disorder. My mom, undiagnosed, but my mother, it fits the diagnosis to a T, as does one of my sisters, and I'd say that my other sister has narcissistic personality disorder. And in myself, I feel like I've grappled with undoing those patterns and how they play out in me and in my interactions. And when I realized the diagnosis, this name of BPD, I formed a peer group. This was way back in the day when Craigslist was much more in use, and being in a circle and healing with other, having others to reflect on this. It was revolutionary. And it was what set me on a path to becoming a therapist to offer support for people with this history, this wounding. And yeah, I did a visualization once where I went back in time and saw my young self. And I basically said to her, "Don't worry, I'm coming back for you. But not only that, but I'm going to make it better for as many people as I possibly can who are impacted in this way."
Right. So you have your own history with the disorder, borderline personality disorder, um, and in your family, you don't feel like you have that disorder. You are a person who has grappled with the effects of growing up with someone, a loved one who has borderline personality disorder. So there are two questions that pop up, and one is I think the audience might benefit from understanding what is borderline personality disorder, and then the other one is how does that connect with social justice?
Yeah. So one piece I wanted to respond to too is that I don't fit the diagnosis, but I think that growing up in it, I can't help but have some of like struggle with some of the aspects. And I'll speak about the diagnosis in a moment, but I was taught to take things personally. I was taught to be highly dysregulated. Like so that and even people who show up in my groups, it's a yes and it's like, well, you're here. So you're definitely on a path of moving towards healing, but you can't help but also demonstrate some of the patterns as well.
It was the soil you grew up in. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's right. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And it's so hard to see it when that's what the waters you're swimming in.
Yeah.
So I have my little list here because I don't always remember all of the characteristics of BPD. I would say one thing that is essential to it is the person filters everything through their own experience. And it's hard for them to empathize with someone else because their experience is so intense. I've heard that it described as like being a burn victim. So there's like almost no filter that prevents them from the pain of the world. They experience everything very intensely. Uh, so BPD, you need to have five of the following nine. So one is abandonment reaction. That's abandonment is so strong in people with BPD. Unstable relationships, unstable self-image. So lots of poor self-esteem, impulsivity, which also can be self-damaging patterns, um, recurrent suicidal behavior and self-harms. That's similar to the one before it. Emotional instability. So if we think about the window of tolerance, like where we're in a window where we're regulated, versus being in hyperarousal or hypoarousal. I think of someone with having BPD as that window is very narrow. If they're regulated, they don't stay there long. They're in the window and then they pop right out again. The next one is chronic feelings of emptiness. The next one is inappropriate anger. And then the ninth one is paranoia or dissociation. And so five of these qualifies for the diagnosis.
Mm, okay. Okay.
It's there's so much to say about it, but it often goes undiagnosed because someone won't bring themselves to therapy because they feel so much a victim of circumstances in their life. They don't, it's very egocentric. Like I show up in therapy and say to the therapist, I'm suffering from anxiety, I'm suffering from depression. But someone who has BPD patterning might not feel like there's something wrong with them.
Right. They think there's something wrong with how they're being treated. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay. So you use the term emotional dysregulation. And does, I mean, some people know
Yes.
what that means. It's so common in our society, just the whole experience of being dysregulated. But I wonder if you would just take a moment to explain that a little more. You use the metaphor of the window of tolerance. Yeah.
Sure, totally. And then I know that you asked me about the connection to social justice.
Right.
So when I'm calm and regulated and I'm within this window, I can respond rather than react. I can rest and digest. So the blood is flowing through my body to support the functioning of the whole body. When I'm in hyperarousal, I'm in fight, flight, freeze. I might even be dissociated and stuck on the couch. These are dysregulation. So it's I would say regulated is all the things that fall within that window of being able to respond, being in my full capacities. And then
Right.
when I'm, yeah, dysregulated is when I'm not in those.
Right. And all of those are physiological responses. It's actually happening to our bodies. Not
Yes,
just what are happening. I mean, it's our thoughts too, but it's really happening to our bodies, right?
right.
And it's out of our control to some extent. It doesn't, ultimately, it's not, but that's how we,
Biologically, it served our
yeah,
ancestors to be able to fight or
yeah,
flee a situation.
yeah,
And these are things I think that we don't discern in our stressful lives between a saber-toothed tiger and a deadline. It all feels the same to the nervous system and it's
yeah,
physiological.
right. Okay, so let's shift over to social justice,
Social
so what's
justice.
happening in society. Yeah,
Well, first of all, I would say, sadly, the things that we need to recover from a history of invalidation, like all of the things that we would need is the opposite of what we're getting from the world at large right now. Like we need the chance to metabolize stress hormones before the next stressful thing is coming at us. And we need safety. And we're getting the opposite of that. So I see the world as like playing out uh, unresolved trauma on an epic scale. And I think the fact that we elected a personality disorder president, and we see that across in so many cultures right now where there's a dictator in charge, it's like I feel like there's some unresolved stuff in society that people reach for electing an abusive father figure. And so because I see things so much through the lens of BPD and invalidation, I see it everywhere. I see the whole world as being volatile and dysfunctional, and where cancel culture and the polarization and the inability to hear each other, the inability to stay grounded and regulated, the way that people play out road rage on yeah, there's so much interfacing of dysregulation. That's what being behind the wheel of a car allows people to be highly dysregulated in each other's presence and be very dangerous, I think.
okay, okay. So the dysregulation you were talking about, um, actually, I've lost my question. It has
Mm.
to do with emotional dysregulation and how how the kind of work that you do, what you call reparative therapy, that is aimed at people who come from these kinds of backgrounds.
Mm.
What aspects of that kind of therapy would be helpful for people at large to help them
Mm.
heal and then bring it back into the world so the world is a more regulated place? I'm curious if you could make that connection.
Yeah, I have so much enthusiasm for the ways that I'm working. Um, that I could just use the example of I have a level 2 of my therapy group, and w- we met for the second time last evening, and I feel like there is so much empathy and stitching together, and there's such an opposite reparative experience happening in a circle. And I think that there's something about doing group therapy in a circle that is decolonizing. It's rather than me sitting there as the therapist with the wisdom, it's they're offering it to each other. They're feeling each other resonance with each other. There's there's internalizing the feeling of the community that shifts in their nervous system, and there's the co-regulation that really helps them go back out into the world and face the challenges of um, living with a parent right now, or being in highly confronting work situations, or the instability of life. Like they're like, I think that this reparative work, in part, it's me wanting to offer those clients a missing experience and also give them it to them while they're being in co-regulation or getting their nervous systems calmed so that they can really take it in to make up for the deficits of their childhood.
Right.
Yeah.
And if they're in relationships, if they're a parent, then they offer their regulation, their new regulation, their skills at regulating themselves to the people they interact with, which just kind of has a ripple effect, I would imagine.
Mm. Yes, yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Let me ask you a question about the use of the word borderline personality disorder.
Mhm.
We are both therapists. Some of the people watching this aren't necessarily therapists, but they probably have heard, as we have, the use of the term borderline personality disorder as a stigmatizing thing. And I'm curious what your thoughts are about that.
Yeah, I mean, I feel it even as you say the word, and as I say the word borderline personality disorder. I, first of all, never like to say this person is a borderline because that's horrible. I like to say person with borderline personality disorder. But even better, I like the term that the National Education Alliance on Borderline Personality Disorder uses. They use this word chronic emotional dysregulation.
Uh-huh.
And so I think that speaks so much more to the experience of the person rather than borderline. It's been stamped on by the mental health industrial complex, which is used for it's used diagnosing is used for getting insurance to cover things. It's well, someone has this branding of this, you know, diagnosis. For me, I just feel so much grief when I think about the people that, first of all, it's a disorder that comes from trauma, and it comes from a lifetime of dysregulation and of being misunderstood and feeling misunderstood. And then to have professionals or even people in the world like associate folks with a negative stigma, like that it just reinforces the difficulty that this person feels of isolation and being misunderstood. So
Yeah.
I always want to bring a great deal of compassion. And at the same time, I don't ever want to pressure any of my clients to be anywhere than where they are at. Because if you had a childhood where your parents' needs are eclipsing yours again and again, I want people to show up in my therapy groups to have the room to be mm, in anger or grief or grappling with how to be in contact with their parent. or their sibling or who or their ex-partner or their partner or whoever it is in their life that's suffering in those ways.
Right. That sounds that sounds really loving, very
Mm.
loving and caring. I'm curious if there's something you want to read from your article or you want to talk about something other, from your life that would be more elucidating. I mean, it's been very elucidating so far, but yeah, is there a particular something you want to read?
Well, I could read something, but I'm really excited about this metaphor, which
Okay.
is that basically I have this plastic object, which was a toy of mine in the 70s. And folks who grew up in the 70s sometimes will remember Weebles. Weebles wobble, but they don't fall down. And it's absurd how small it is because it's kind of a choking hazard for a child. But these I realized when I was sitting with a client a few years back, I was thinking about this. There's something in our nature, those of us that had to grow up in this environment, where boom, I'll just keep doing, popping back up again, no matter what. And it's this sort of, it's an amazing resilience, yes. But it's also, there's something about this weevil. It doesn't have hands, it doesn't have legs. I mean, when you look at this, what lets it keep popping back up again?
Yeah, it's very weighted, especially towards the bottom.
Right.
Hmm.
Exactly. So that's what's happening physics wise. But then
Hmm.
I invite the therapists that I'm working with to look at like what is happening in the character. Like there has to be so much that gets stuffed down and disavowed. That's a therapeutic term, but I have to deny my feelings to survive the circumstances of my childhood. I have to keep pretending that I don't feel grief and rage or that I have a sense of self because it's constantly being eclipsed.
Yeah.
And Janina Fisher talks about how, as trauma survivors, prepare, we prepare as if the worst is going to happen, but in our minds, we almost expect that the best might happen, where we have this hopefulness and we keep bouncing back up again. And so I'm working on a book. I have this concept, and my title is Why Weebles Don't Grow Legs.
Hmm.
They don't
Yeah.
grow legs because my unspoken contract with my parent is that I will never threaten the relational bond.
Right. You'll never have agency, will never be able to walk away. You will only be able to react.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Wow.
I'll keep myself dysregulated. I'll keep myself young. I'll keep myself from thriving or being too happy or in any way moving too far metaphorically or physically from my parent and their needs.
Wow.
So also this weevil doesn't have hands to be able to receive. It doesn't have feet to be able to stand on its own. Um, so
Yeah.
these contracts run so deep. And I like having something whimsical and playful to look
Yeah.
at these really hard concepts because
Yeah.
that helps me.
Right. And it takes it out of you personally that this is what's happening in the world that you grew up in. This is not just your experience alone. Yeah. That's
Yeah,
great. So
totally.
as we're going to come to an end of the interview, I'm
Mhm.
wondering if people want to read more about your work or know how to get in touch with you. Besides, they get the book.
Yes,
The book they can
absolutely.
get at my website, www.karenrachels.com/publications. And maybe you also have a link to it on your website.
I
Or we'll
do.
put one
Yes.
up. And
Sure.
what is your website?
My website is Reparentive Therapy. So Reparentive therapy, therapy.com. Um, so
Okay.
yeah, I've trademarked that term reparentive.
Uh-huh.
So
Great.
yeah.
Well, you're doing fabulous work, and thank you for taking the time to talk with me.
Thank
Really
you so much,
appreciate it.
Karen. It's been such a joy to work with
Yeah,
you, and I'm so
yeah,
honored to have a chapter in this book.
yeah. I'm so glad you're involved
Yeah.
too. Okay, thanks, Pamela.
Thanks, Karen.
Stop the recording. Okay.
How long was that? Maybe 15 minutes, 20